The humid air of Guadalcanal envelops Colonel Kono Ichiki as he crouches near the muddy banks of the Tanaru River, peering at the enemy lines with his binoculars. It's 2:00 a.m. on August 21, 1942, and the sticky atmosphere soaks into his uniform like an unwelcome layer. In the shadows behind him, 900 of Japan's finest warriors stand poised in utter quiet, battle-hardened from campaigns in China, Malaya, and the Philippines, fighters untouched by loss. Ichiki shifts the katana at his waist, its steady heft a comforting presence. Over the past half-year, U.S. forces have scattered before Japanese blades throughout the Pacific, from Wake Island to Guam and the Philippines. Wherever the imperial flag rises, the enemy scatters or yields. The leathernecks holding out on Guadalcanal would follow suit. "Honorable Colonel," murmurs his aide, Lieutenant Furukawa, slithering closer on his belly. The troops stand prepared. "We'll seize Henderson Field by first light." Ichiki gives a slight dip of his head, eyeing the dim flickers of smokes across the water where U.S. sentries puff away recklessly from their dugouts. What laxity! What frailty! A sneer twists his mouth. "These aren't the tough Brits we clashed with in Hong Kong, Furukawa-san. No, these are Yankee part-timers, assembly line hands, and country lads pretending at war." Muffled chuckles float over the inky river from the Marine lines. Chuckles right before combat. Ichiki has pored over reports on these foes, ordinary folk who signed up post-Pearl Harbor with scant 8 months of drill, facing the honed fury of Japanese Bushido. They'd shatter under the initial bonsai rush, same as the rest. Yet this foliage carries an odd vibe. The night feels thicker, more vibrant. Eerie avian cries echo from the treetops, and the atmosphere hangs thick with threat. Ichiki dismisses the unease. Just pre-fight jitters, that's all. He's commanded units through 3 major operations without a single setback. His fingertips brush the old inscriptions on his sword's hilt. Glory in demise, triumph in survival. Phrases his ancestor bore through the Russo-Japanese War. Maxims that never let the Ichiki lineage down. This evening, they'll hack through Yankee ranks and reclaim imperial prestige on these forsaken shores. "Give the signal to the ranks," Ichiki orders, his tone a hush beneath the forest's murmur. "Assault in 1 hour, no captives. Let these rebels pay dearly for challenging the emperor." As Furukawa slips off to pass the word, Ichiki scans once more through his lenses. The U.S. setups look oddly relaxed, excessively so. Gun positions flung about haphazardly, howitzers placed with no clear pattern. Perhaps these jarheads are utter novices, or... He banishes the doubt. No room for that. Japanese blades never falter. Japanese resolve never bends. These Yanks are on the verge of discovering the empire of the rising sun's dominance over half the Asia-Pacific. Still, as Ichiki leans in to await the launch cue, one nagging query lingers. Why do the Americans show no fear? 6,000 meters distant in Tokyo, presses are already rolling out triumphant banners for the impending win. Yet, amid the choking gloom of Guadalcanal's undergrowth, Lieutenant Furukawa weaves among knots of poised infantrymen, murmuring last directives that ring like invocations. "Heed the creed," he instructs every squad. "Dishonor precedes death, success or oblivion. Advance only." The soldiers incline their heads wordlessly, cheeks smeared with dirt and resolve. "Not draftees here. This is the Ichiki detachment, selected from the crack 28th Infantry Regiment." Private Yamamoto grips his weapon with steady fingers, unquaked by prior fights. Sergeant Tanaka tests the bayonet's bite, keen as a whisper through fabric. They form the Empire's blade, and this night it will slice true. But over that slim waterway, a shift unfolds, one alien to annals of warfare. Marine Sergeant Frank Few scans the leafy void, his partial Cherokee heritage stirring primeval tracking senses beyond Japanese grasp. Next to him, Private Sid Phillips feeds fresh rounds into his gun with the steady rhythm of a rural youth versed in mending stubborn engines. "Catch that?" Few breathes to his trenchmate. "The woods have hushed, unnaturally so. Even the bugs have quit their evening racket." These aren't the dilettantes Ichiki envisions. Phillips endured the Dust Bowl collapse, seeing kin stripped bare, grasping that survival demands grit over glory. Few was forged stalking Arizona ridges, where error spells doom. where guile and endurance trump bravado. They battle not for divine rule or lineage pride. They strive to return breathing, and soon they'll unveil for the imperial forces a brutal style of combat absent from any doctrine. Colonel Ichiki stands, his palm drifting toward he grips the pommel of his blade in a ritual passed down through generations long before his ancestors' time. Surrounding him, 900 troops gear up for what they expect to be the final banzai assault in a swift skirmish. They've drilled this scenario endlessly. The rapid ford of the stream, the synchronized rush, the panicked U.S. withdrawal. Yet nobody has informed them that U.S. Marine tactics reject any notion of falling back. Pay close attention. Ichi speaks to his company leaders in hushed tones, scarcely above a breath. The Yankee Marines are unruly lone wolves. They don't possess the soulful resolve of Nipponese warriors. As we advance with bayonets locked, howling the sovereign's title, their occidental psyches will crumble. They'll scatter like hares. His scouting intel backs up every preconception he holds. These Yanks hail from a cushy republic, where each fellow fancies himself unique, where shared devotion is unthinkable. How could such folk resist troops forged in 2,000 years of warrior heritage? But on the opposite shore, gunner Art Pendleton checks his weapons sweep for the 100th occasion, mapping out shooting lanes with the icy accuracy of a New England mill hand who knows gear must function flawlessly or lives are forfeit. His assistant, Whitney Jacobs, meticulously lays out ammo strips, shaped by a childhood in poverty that drilled into him how squandering resources, even rounds, invites death. These leathernecks aren't pondering monarchs or freedoms. Their minds fix on the imperial foe who, just days prior, hoisted a surrender banner to bait Colonel Gouda's squad into a trap, then decapitated the captives and desecrated the remains. They dwell on the Pearl Harbor raid, on comrades lost in the Philippine Isles, on a conflict they didn't seek but now vow to see through. And they've devoted weeks transforming this waterway passage into a death trap. The imperial war ethos fails to grasp the peril ahead. Their samurai ethic insists on dignity in combat, close quarters clashes where valor decides the outcome. Yet these Yanks lack any such warrior code. They wield something far deadlier, the raw cunning of fighters determined not to yield. Concealed howitzers stand zeroed on the bank. Autos are emplaced in overlapping kill sectors that will dye the shallows crimson. Signal rockets poised to light up the slaughter zone. Even the razor wire coils not to block the enemy, but to funnel them into preset ambush areas. Private Jim Young tweaks his tube's aimer once more, recalling his dad's hunting tales from Ohio. At times, the buck figures, "It's stalking you, boy." That's your cue to reveal the true hunter. At 2:50 a.m., Colonel Ichuki issues the command. 900 Imperial infantrymen stand as a unit, their spearheads shimmering under the stars, their shouts merging into a battle roar that's resounded over the east for ages. They charge the river in total assurance, convinced Yankee resolve will fracture at the clash of Nippon steel. They haven't the faintest clue they're on the verge of facing a force their strategic doctrine never conceived. Yanks who battle like the wilderness around them, stealthy, savage, and completely pitiless. The lead Imperial troops wade into the Tenaroo River, and for an instant, the darkness pauses. Then the abyss yawns wide and engulfs them entirely. The initial crack rings out from Leatherneck Private Whitney Jacobs's piece precisely at 2:51 a.m., ripping the humid gloom like shattering crystal. In that lone barrel blaze, 2 millennia of Imperial combat legacy slams against Yankee ordnance, and the impact shatters all that Colonel Ichiki assumed about soldiering. Leatherneck, this night you perish. The Imperial shout rends the shadows as scores of crack troops hurl themselves into the Tenaroo River, their blades flashing like molten bolts. They anticipate Yankee chaos, Yankee flight, Yankee capitulation. What greets them instead is a tactic absent from any of their field guides. They face leathernecks who wage war like the surrounding wilds. Corporal Art Pendleton's auto-cannon bursts forth initially. Its barrel glow paints the edge in pulsing amber glow. Imperial troops, splendid in bravery, impeccable in ranks, storm headlong into crossed fire patterns that convert the ford into a charnel house. My God, Pendleton bellows amid his weapon's thunderous din. They won't stop advancing. But this isn't the disjointed lone wolf strikes Imperial theory anticipates from Yankee mavericks. This is orchestrated mayhem on a level that renders samurai ideals obsolete. Each Marine tool unleashes into mapped death sectors. Pre-registered tube rounds from prior surveys rain down with calculated exactness. Pyrotechnics pop above, flooding the black with searing glare and outlining Imperial figures like pins in a carnival booth. Colonel Ichiki stares in mounting dread as his flawlessly drilled, rigidly obedient troops are cut down not by Yankee valor, but by Yankee industrial warfare. This isn't noble battle. This is mass slaughter. And his troops are the expendable feedstock. Private First Class Jim Young shoves mortar rounds into the barrel as quickly as his assistant can pass them over. Every blast erupts plumes of dirt, liquid, and mangled limbs skyward. "We're not battling warriors," he yells to his team. "We're wiping out pests." The Japanese surge onward because their Bushido code insists on it. Fleeing is a disgrace far beyond dying. Yet each advance pulls them further into a death apparatus crafted by folks who mastered combat amid the mills and fields of the United States. Individuals who grasp that productivity trumps chivalry. Sergeant Frank F., his Native American heritage fueling savage urges, glides through the foliage unseen. When enemy troops breach the stream ford, they encounter no fleeing foes, but lone leathernecks stalking them in the shadows with methods predating recorded history. His blade slices across 3 Japanese necks before they sense doom closing in. "This isn't conflict," wheezes Lieutenant Furukawa, gripping his punctured torso as his unit unravels. "This is carnage." Spot on. That's precisely the nature of it. The Yanks wage war devoid of principle, devoid of codes, devoid of pity. They deploy scatterguns, arms that the Geneva Convention would subsequently attempt to outlaw for their barbarity in battle. They synchronize artillery barrages akin to streamlining production chains in plants. They strike under cover of darkness, unleashing mechanized fury on fighters schooled in hand-to-hand duels. And the results are brutally triumphant. Colonel Ichiki, his impeccable attire now caked in filth and gore, confronts a stark terror that all his doctrinal training was misguided. These GIs aren't engaging as troops, they're operating as apparatus, a lethal contraption that devours Nipponese valor and spits out Nipponese remains. Private Al Schmid, his features ravaged by shrapnel from a grenade, keeps squeezing the trigger on his heavy weapon despite total blindness. His feeder bellows guidance right into his hearing. Port side, further port. Open up now. The weapon rattles on without pause, mowing down Imperial soldiers who perish with impeccable valor and utter pointlessness. "They're snared in the entanglement," howls Corporal Johnny Rivers, eyeing the enemy troops ensnaring themselves in razor wire that funnels them straight into his weapon's lethal arc. His gun blazes away till the muzzle turns cherry red, till the cooling sleeve steams over, till the piece starts warping under relentless output. This marks the clash where Imperial martial doctrine collides with U.S. manufacturing might, and doctrine crumbles. The Japanese warriors perform superbly. They rush straight into the hail of bullets undeterred. They vault across the fallen forms of their fellows and assault once more. They cry out for the Emperor while lead rips them asunder. Their bravery is total, their order flawless, their dignity beyond reproach, and it avails them zilch. For the Americans aren't contending for prestige, they're contending to prevail. And prevailing demands dispatching every Imperial fighter via the swiftest method available. Private Sid Phillips peers through his tube sight as young Japanese, lads his age hailing from distant villages and towns, get shredded by U.S. blasts. He senses no pride, no triumph, no elation, only the steely resolve of a rural youth who knows that survival sometimes requires ending the threat aiming to end you. The waterway flows crimson. Enemy cadavers stack 3 or 4 layers thick in the ford. The clamor of U.S. arms persists unceasingly. Autocannons, howitzers, carbines, repeaters, all unleashing a harmonious barrage of ruin that reduces crack Imperial infantrymen to fragmented remains. At 4:17 a.m., Colonel Ichiki performs seppuku. He doesn't perish in splendid clash against a Yankee blade. He doesn't collapse at the forefront of a last assault. He expires solitary in the undergrowth, gutting himself with his heirloom katana, unable to confront reality. That Yankee treachery has just annihilated Japan's premier warriors. His farewell missive, discovered later, bears one lone phrase: "We failed to comprehend our adversary." Come first light, 890 Japanese troops sprawl lifeless along a 100-yard riverside span. The Marines suffer 43 fatalities. The stark arithmetic of the loss count narrates the full tale. This defies combat as the Japanese conceive it. This is annihilation. Sergeant F treads amid the imperial dead as dawn's rays pierce the treetops. Numerous slain fighters are his juniors in years. Their garb remains tidy, their gear immaculate, their rifles spotless. They met their end akin to champions from bygone eras, slain by combatants from the era to follow. Private Phillips gazes upon a Japanese youth no older than 17, fingers yet clasped around a snapshot surely depicting kin. The lad's gaze remains wide, fixed on void, and Phillips comprehends with nauseating clarity that this embodies the face of contemporary conflict. Not renown and triumph give way to ruthless efficiency in the kill. "Lord, have mercy on us," murmurs Corporal Pendleton, gazing at the devastation wrought by his machine gun. "What monsters have we turned into?" The reply lingers in the steamy dawn atmosphere. Left unsaid, yet grasped by every Marine who endured the darkness. They've transformed into precisely what the situation required. Not legends, not fighters, not troops battling for lofty ideals. They've evolved into executioners, precise, pitiless, devastatingly proficient executioners. And amid the infernal thickets of Guadalcanal, that's the sole priority. Images capture the tale more vividly than any official dispatch. Japanese corpses piled like firewood beside the Tenarú River. U.S. Marines positioned amid the slaughter, neither rejoicing nor grinning, merely gazing with the vacant stares of individuals who have uncovered a horrifying truth about their own nature. The cold calculus of contemporary carnage exposed in stark monochrome. Private Frank Pomeroy, a survivor of the clash, bore one vision throughout his days: a Japanese officer's blade, gripped tightly in its bearer's final hold, mirroring the rising sun like a damning indictment. "We battled like beasts," he penned to his sibling in Massachusetts, "and the cruelest aspect was its success." That correspondence encapsulates the mental shift that Guadalcanal imposed on U.S. combatants. They entered the wilderness as refined troops adhering to codes of dignified warfare. They emerged as an entirely different breed, individuals who realized victory outweighs valor, that endurance surpasses splendor, that methodical elimination surpasses valiant sacrifice every instance. The Japanese war apparatus, rooted in 2 millennia of samurai heritage, never rebounded from that insight. In mere weeks, dispatches from additional Pacific engagements started mirroring an altered truth. Japanese troops who had stormed U.S. lines with fanatical bravery since Pearl Harbor now wavered. They excavated more fortified pits. They engaged more cautiously. The daunting assurance that propelled them through Asia started fracturing. For rumors circulate swiftly in any force. The Americans ceased behaving like refined combatants. They waged war like the wilderness around them, methodical, savage, and completely devoid of compassion. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Edson, leader of the Marines at the site dubbed Bloody Ridge, got a note from a seized Japanese officer that aptly conveyed the mental toll of U.S. forest warfare. "Your troops battled devoid of valor, yet they battled to prevail. We cannot rely on your frailty any longer." That declaration marks one of the pivotal tactical evolutions in armed conflict annals. For the initial occasion since Pearl Harbor, Japanese leaders needed to strategize against U.S. capability rather than U.S. timidity. They needed to anticipate that Marines would resist until the end rather than yield. They needed to brace for grinding contests rather than swift conquests. And Japan's whole Pacific approach rested on swift conquests. The consequences rippled well past Guadalcanal. At Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, Japanese guardians confronted not the amateur fighters they anticipated, but seasoned slayers honed in the Solomon's wilds. Individuals who grasped that conflict concerns not prestige. It concerns forcing the adversary to perish for his nation. Marine Sergeant Sid Phillips, questioned half a century post-conflict, stated it plainly. "We arrived at Guadalcanal as youths pretending at arms. We departed as adults versed in lethal proficiency." The Japanese hadn't foreseen that change, and it doomed their campaign. Yet the toll reached further than armed doctrine. The Marines from Guadalcanal came back bearing a shadow, indelible within their spirits. They'd realized that refined individuals could morph into feral assassins when existence required it. They'd absorbed that bravery lacking skill amounts to self-destruction, that prestige lacking success amounts to mere demise. Most unsettling, they'd absorbed their exceptional aptitude for slaying. Private Art Pendleton, whose gun had felled countless Japanese fighters, never recounted the fight to his offspring. Queried on his wartime role, he'd merely remark, "We performed what necessity demanded." His descendant discovered his wartime journal following Pendleton's passing in 1987. The last notation, from August 22, 1942, holds only 4 terms. "Lord, absolve us all." Nowadays, war scholars examine Guadalcanal as the juncture where U.S. units mastered equaling Japanese savagery through mechanized precision. But the true insight delves beyond maneuvers or plans. Guadalcanal revealed that refinement is a fragile coating readily peeled when existence hangs in balance. It illustrated that everyday folks, farmhands, laborers, shop attendants, can turn into remarkably potent assassins when aptly driven. The Japanese warriors slain at the Tenarú River were valiant, rigorous, and principled. They perished for the M. They stormed ahead for honor and nation with unshakable bravery. Yet, bravery alone proves insufficient against a foe who forsakes chivalry in favor of ruthless pragmatism. When your rival wages war not for prestige, but sheer existence. Ultimately, that harsh truth was inscribed in the blood of Japanese soldiers beside a tangled stream on a remote Pacific atoll. Frequently, the group that resorts to the grimmest methods is the one that survives to see home again. And back in 1942, mere survival stood as the ultimate prize.